Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a severe weather outbreak which is going to be impacting the central United States, and then another severe weather outbreak for tomorrow, which is going to be affecting parts of the northeast as well. We have some chillier air to the north, maybe even a little bit of snow mixing in parts of North Dakota and central Minnesota, and we're gonna have some warmer temperatures in the southeastern United States and also along the west coast of the United States. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we have a few red flag warnings in effect for parts of Colorado and Utah, as well as some wind advisories in parts of Montana, the Dakotas, and Minnesota. We have a few flood watches in parts of southeastern Texas, and other than that, we don't have many other significant watches or warnings currently in place. Yesterday, we had a high temperature in Rio Grande Village, Texas, where they got up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. The low temperature was tied between 37 miles north of Vernal, Utah, and 23 miles south of Gunnison, Colorado. Both of those areas got down to 16 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest precipitation or rainfall report was in Shady Hollow, Texas, where they got 3.64 inches of rain, and the highest snowfall report was 2 miles north of Cook City, Montana, where they reported 4 inches of snowfall yesterday. So here's what the Storm Prediction Center page looks like for today, and this is really not going to be what we're mostly going to be talking about, but we do have a risk in parts of especially Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. That's where we have a slight risk, and then also for parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas in a thin area we have another slight risk currently in effect for today. But again, that's not really what we're going to be talking about in today's video. It's going to be more of what's going to happen for tomorrow and into Thursday. So here would be for tomorrow's outlook. You can see we have two areas of slight risk, and both cover a very large area. We have one that first covers the central plains, even going down into parts of Oklahoma and Texas, with a little enhanced risk in parts of southern Nebraska and northern Kansas. We also have another area of slight risk, and I believe this is one of our first slight risks of the year in parts of the northeast, and that covers pretty much anywhere from eastern Ohio all the way up into western Maine. So we have a fairly good risk, especially more interior parts of the northeast, to get some severe weather tomorrow, and we're also going to be talking about that and giving you what the simulated radar is for that event. Here's the day 3 outlook, which would be for the Thursday, and you can see that we have a slight risk which covers much of the central plains and also into the central Mississippi River Valley, and that covers states anywhere from Texas all the way as far east as Indiana, Illinois, and Kentucky. So it's a fairly wide area. And then we have another huge area of enhanced risk which covers much of Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, and pretty much the entire southern half of Missouri. So that's the area where the Storm Prediction Center is really focusing in on these storms, and this is where they think this could really ramp up, unfortunately. So let's start off in the northeast, because this is going to be more of a minor event. So let's get this one out of the way, and then we'll talk about the bigger event, which would be in the central plains. So you can see that by later tomorrow, so this is around 2 p.m. Eastern time, we're dealing with a few scattered storms. Some could be severe at times, some parts of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, maybe lingering down into parts of Maryland, Virginia, and I wouldn't even rule it out in parts of eastern West Virginia as well. If we move this on a little bit, everything moves to the east, so this would be by 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, and you can see that we're dealing with some of these storms in fairly robust lines. So it looks like they're going to be fairly concentrated within single file lines, somewhat like this. So you can see we have a couple organized areas of storminess, and these are just going to go to the east and head out one by one. A couple areas might get hit by multiple different storms, so maybe you get hit once at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then you get another round around 5 or 6 o'clock. So they will be training thunderstorms that go back and forth with multiple rounds of storms to them, and you can definitely see how probably anywhere west of the Delaware River, and also anywhere pretty much west of the coast. So if you get inland by probably about 50 miles, that's when you're going to start to get into more of these severe storms. It looks like as you get that marine layer, which would be hugging or right along the coast, that's when these storms might be able to weaken a little bit because of that marine layer, just because it will be a little bit chillier along the immediate coast as well, and also because we're not going to be able to generate as much energy, and the dew points also won't be as high. So you can see these fairly robust storms in parts of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, parts of New England, Here would be by 8 p.m. Eastern time, and you can see mainly dying out by this point. So it's mostly just heavier rain in parts of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, parts of New England, even into parts of central and northern Maine. So these are going to be fairly far to the north as well. So we're not just dealing with this in areas further to the south. This will also extend maybe pretty close to the Canadian border. So this is really going to go quite far to the north. And then moving this on a little bit more, you can see it's really dying out, and again, that's pretty much that marine layer starting to play in. Another factor is going to be that the storms start off right around Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, so they're starting off right here, so they're burning energy that entire way. So by the time they hit the coast, they're pretty much out of energy. They don't have any more energy to really expend in these areas. So it looks like it's not really going to play out if you live in the coastal areas, but you go inland by, again, maybe 25 to 50 miles. You get into parts of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Vermont, western Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine. That's when you can start getting into some of the more stormy activity. So here's the next event, which would be in parts of the Central Plains. It's going to start off in actually parts of South Dakota and Nebraska, and eventually all those storms will be headed further south and eastward. Something that you need to know is that we have a cold atmosphere and a cold pattern in parts of North Dakota and the northern half of Minnesota, even stretching to parts of South Dakota as well. We have high temperatures in those areas, barely getting out of the 40s. We're actually going to be seeing a little bit of snow breakout in these areas, some heavy wet snow. So if you live in parts of the Dakotas, especially North Dakota and also into central or northern Minnesota, watch out. You could be seeing a couple flakes flying around here and there. Not too much in the way of accumulation is expected. But to the south, we actually have temperatures in the 80s, so that's around a 30-40 degree temperature difference within, I would say, a couple hundred miles. So with that sharp of a temperature difference, the atmosphere is really going to need to burn off some of that energy and some of that instability that's created by that temperature difference, and it's going to do that in the form of some thunderstorms. And this is going to be a fairly good severe weather outbreak. So let's get right into it. You can see that by tomorrow night, as at the same time that those storms are going on in parts of the interior northeast, we have another more robust line in parts of western Nebraska, eastern Colorado. By the way, these areas in parts of Kansas and eastern Colorado yesterday, I believe they had a few tornadoes. I believe they had a tornado watch actually up in some of these areas. The other day, I believe western Nebraska, eastern Wyoming was impacted by a couple storms. So this same area has been impacted over the past week. They've been really hammered with these storms, and this is just going to be another example of that. But it does look like after this one event, it should die down in these areas, so we're not dealing with a huge loop of these storms happening over and over again. So this would be by Wednesday evening. Moving this on, you can see that fairly robust line of storms is breaking off a little bit, but it is still strong in parts of central Nebraska, southern South Dakota. If we move this on a little bit, you're starting to see that snow in that blue color start to pop up right along that Canadian border. But more importantly, to the south, we have in parts of Kansas and also into eastern Nebraska, eastern South Dakota, a little bit of storminess. As you get further to the north, that is mostly just a steady rain, not really anything in terms of thunder or lightning in those areas. Here to be by Thursday, very early in the morning. So this is around 4 in the morning Central Time on Thursday, and you can see that we have one big cell of thunderstorms, maybe another line of semi-convective storms in parts of eastern South Dakota. Moving this on a little bit, you can see that snow breaking out in parts of North Dakota, scattered through parts of northern Minnesota. So that's something that's going to be interesting. You might see that popping up on the radar a little bit, and it's going to be very borderline, and again, no accumulation is really expected. You can see this first line is starting to move into eastern Kansas, western Missouri by this point. And if we play this out even a little bit more, you can see as that continues to press to the south, this first line is actually going to die out, and then we're going to see another line pop up right behind it, and that's going to be a bigger line that's going to impact areas in Missouri, southern Kansas, parts of northern Oklahoma as well. So that's going to be the second more intense band of or line of storms, I would say. So this one fizzles out, and then here's the next one right behind it. So this would be by Thursday evening. This is around 3 or 4 in the afternoon Central Time, and you can see actually fairly strong and robust line into eastern Kansas. If we move this on a little bit more, you can see that it does actually widen out. So this looks actually fairly intense, and this is not a good sign because you can see all these kind of little holes in the storm band. That is actually indicating that we could have a couple pockets where we do see a little bit of hail or maybe even tornadic activity. The fact that this is broken up a little bit shows that this is not just going to be a straight line wind damage event. We could be dealing with a few tornadoes here and there, and most likely we will probably see a little bit of hail mixed in there as well. And in total, rainfall amounts might even equate to 2 or 3 inches in a couple of these areas. So also flooding in some isolated areas that don't have good drainage could be an issue in some of these spots. You can see that snow still up to the north, maybe even into parts of northern Wisconsin. It'll really depend on how cold it can actually get, whether we can get down to 36 or 37 or whether it'll stay up into the 40s. So again, not a big deal in terms of the snowfall. The bigger issue is going to be to the south where we have that rainfall issue. Switching over to the NAM 12 km model to continue this out, since the other model doesn't go out far enough, you can see that line of storms staying over parts of Kansas and northern Missouri. That continues to head further to the south, and as it does that, it looks like it will weaken. So I think once it passes the Arkansas border, that's when it'll start to really weaken. So I don't think it'll go much past Arkansas, maybe gets into northern Arkansas, but the central and southern part of Arkansas, southeastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas, Louisiana, anywhere pretty much south and east of there, you could look to be safe from this event, because it does look like it'll die out right before it impacts those regions. But again, we still want to see more of the high resolution model. I'm still waiting on the NAM 3km model to get in so that we can get some more detailed information on this particular storm. Looking at some of the ingredients, here are the high temperatures, and we're going to be covering both of these storms at the same time. So you can see the one in the interior northeast definitely have warm enough temperatures. We have temperatures into the 70s and 80s, even some 90s further to the south. And then in the central plains, you can see that we have a few temperatures that are getting up into the 70s and 80s in parts of Nebraska and southern South Dakota. And then you go to the north in Minnesota, North Dakota, northern South Dakota. We have temperatures barely getting out of the 50s, maybe staying into the 40s on Wednesday. Here to be by Thursday, even colder in many of these areas in the northern plains. Down through the central plains, however, it is much warmer. So you can see in parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, all above that 75-degree mark, and we even have a few areas in parts of Kansas and southern Missouri getting up near 90. So getting really warm out there for Thursday. And then if we even look at for Friday, when this is going to be moving into parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and generally in this area right here, temperatures are also warm. So we have temperatures that are getting up near the upper 70s, even into the low 80s in a few areas. So temperatures definitely warm enough to support these storms. If we look at the dew points, these might be a little bit lacking in parts of the northern plains and areas such as Nebraska and southern South Dakota. So not seeing a huge amount of moisture into this region by Wednesday afternoon. If we look at for Thursday, as the storms are into this region right here, the dew points are into the mid and upper 60s, even a few 70+ degree dew points starting to pop up there. So definitely we have enough humidity and we have enough moisture into the atmosphere for these storms to really develop. If we look at for Friday, as they're heading off further to the south, we still have a fairly large area of dew points above 60 and above 65, even above 70 in a few of these areas. If you look at another parameter, you can see that by tomorrow afternoon, we have, first in the northeast, we have Cape values that are going to be fairly decent, especially for the northeast, where it's not typical to see Cape values even approaching 500. So when you do see that, that's when you know you could have some sort of severe weather event in the northeast. You can see how we have, especially in parts of Pennsylvania, upstate New York, into parts of northern New England, some higher amounts of Cape. So that will definitely help fuel these storms. By the way, this is just a way of measuring the instability or energy in the atmosphere. The higher the number, the more unstable the atmosphere is, and therefore the more potential for storminess there is. And then in parts of the northern plains and the central plains, you can see how we have those Cape values getting fairly high. We're up to 500 to 2,000 in a few of these areas. If we look at for Thursday, We have Cape values that are getting up in parts of eastern Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma as well, up near 2,500 to 3,000. In the more widespread fashion, it's up to 1,000 to 1,500. So really high Cape values in many of these areas. And then by Friday, you can see how over much of the South Central Plains and also into the Tennessee Valley, we have those Cape values above 1,000. Although I do think this is when these storms will actually start to fizzle out a little bit, and I don't think they'll make it much past, again, when I was talking about the NAM 12 cam and when we were looking at that model, I did say I don't think it'll get much past the Arkansas border, and I don't think it'll really make it that far to the south of the Arkansas border. I think that'll pretty much be the stopping point for it. It'll start to hit a little bit of rough terrain and elevation, and that should really knock it off and and it'll really start to die down by that point. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.